So today I want to talk about $15 minimum wage, stimulus, and the math behind it all, because the math is really not adding up. And I want to do this by first talking about the ways in which the Democrats have capitulated and backed away from most of their promises, and what exactly they are now offering. And then I want to talk about the numbers and why I think these numbers are problematic and what actually goes into them. And then I want to talk about why I think these numbers are occurring in terms of class and what is being attempted to be achieved through these particular results, both around how much people are getting and around ideas of things like small businesses. So with that said, let's take a look at what the Democrats are now offering. So Senator Manchin, the most conservative Democrat and the person who's going to be a wall to any change and the representative of that hypocrisy, is proposing an $11 minimum wage. $11 to $12 is what I'm hearing. And this $11 to $12, probably 11, is what we're probably going to get. The $15 minimum wage that Biden proposed has been, deemed as too dangerous for small businesses and is not even being thought of right now. During the pandemic, small businesses might tank according to a lot of politicians. So what we're looking at is an $11 minimum wage moving forward. And just keep that number in mind. With that said, the stimulus checks have also been reduced from the $2,000 we were promised to $1,400. And we're getting one, not many. And before anybody comes out and says, oh, well, the $1,400 mixes with the $600 and forms $2,000, that $600 check was done past over a month ago. And some people still haven't received it for sure, but, the check was approved way more than a month ago. Kamala Harris last year was the one teaming with Bernie Sanders to say we need $2,000 stimulus checks every month moving forward. And now we're getting $1,400 from the Biden administration and from the Democrats. That is not enough. It's not going to fix things. It's a nice thing to have, I guess, but it's really not going to fix the problem. To make matters worse, the threshold for when the $1,400 check would be reduced is now being dropped from $75,000 of income to $50,000 for individuals. What that means is that before, with the $600 check, after you made over $75,000 based on 2019 income, you would have that $600 slowly decrease down to zero by the time you phased into $99,000. What they're talking about for this new check is that it will be not $75,000 but $50,000, where the $1,400 payment starts to decrease, which means not some people who made money off of the old check will not get a full $2,000 because anybody above $50,000 is going to have their amount reduced. And that does extend to $100,000 for couples, but that's still an issue for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, most nurses in this country make more than $50,000 a year. That's just what they make. They make closer to the $75,000 range. And they deserve to be paid. They have student loan fees that they're often trying to pay off. They are exorbitant fees and rates, and they are the ones at the forefront of the pandemic. So cutting nurses out of your relief program seems like a really bad idea. Secondly, there are places like New York City where if you are a single parent raising two school-age children because of childcare costs, because of all the other things that go into things, and there's so many different reasons why you might be a single parent with two kids, and there's so many things that go into that. But that person needs about $33 an hour to survive, which comes to close to $70,000 a year. And that person might not receive stimulus checks. And between cities like New York and LA, where prices can be exorbitant, that is ridiculous that we don't have some sort of better metric than just a flat fee. And if Manchin wants to propose that, $11 an hour is enough for West Virginia, and $33 an hour might not be enough for New York for some people, that represents a really wide gap. And it really just shows that the minimum wage, as it's understood, may not be working for people. But that said, let's take a look at some of the numbers involved. And I made a spreadsheet to talk about this, and I'm going to flash some numbers on the screen, but I will explain them. I hope that, you'll just take the time to go over them with me. So when we looked at the original $1,200 checks, the first checks that we got from the Trump administration, they were $1,200, which, if you examine that and you explore why that $1,200 check came about, that occurred because they took the $7.25 an hour minimum wage, the federal minimum wage, assumed that a person was making 40 hours a week, making a 40-hour week rather, and were making that over the course of approximately a month. And if we take that at a 4 weeks at the 40-hour rate, we end up getting approximately $1,160, which rounds to about $1,200. That is where we got the $1,200 stimulus checks. Now, one of the things that I think happened, especially with Senator Manchin, is he looked at the $15 minimum wage and did the exact same logic. And if you do that, you get a $2,400 stimulus check, which means that the Biden checks of $2,000 still aren't enough to make up that difference. But if you look at Manchin's proposed $11 or $12 an hour, that puts you at $1,800 or $1,950 with the equivalent logic. So again, if you take the $11 or $12 an hour or $15 an hour and you multiply them by 40 hours a week at the rate of 4 weeks, you end up getting numbers that approximate these values. So I think that knowing that the $2,000 stimulus checks what they were, Manchin is proposing $1,800 or $1,950 for the monthly rate for minimum wage. Because if we do any different, there's a justification for a $2,400 minimum wage. And I think that's one of the things going on here. But then I want to briefly go over some other values here before I go into any more details. Now, the Democratic cutoff is $50,000. This amounts to $24 an hour. That's really not that much in certain cities. It really isn't. And that gives you about $3,900 before taxes. Now, again, all these numbers are before taxes. And there are some people who can't survive off of that in cities. Rents in New York City can be in the upwards of $2,500 in certain areas for a studio or one-bedroom apartment. If you need a two-bedroom apartment because you have kids, that can be, that much more of an issue. Things are expensive. Things are really expensive, and childcare is expensive and can be thousands of dollars a month. So that is the cutoff of where we are, looking at these checks starting to diminish. The old figure was at $75,000, which comes out to about $36 an hour or $5,800 a month. Then I just wanted to show off what it looks like if you actually made it to six figures. $100,000 a year comes out to $48 for an hour. And that comes out to $7,700 a month. And what does a person in Congress make? Well, they make about $174,000 a year. That means your senators are making $83 an hour if they worked at a 40-hour rate. And I get that they don't work at a 40-hour rate. That's not how being a member of Senate or Congress works. But I just want to put it out there that in a month, they make $13,384, so about $13,400. A minimum wage worker at the current rate makes $15,000 in a year. So a senator makes almost the same amount in a month that a person who is making minimum wage makes in a year if they are working 40 hours. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. So what I think is really going on behind all of these numbers and why they are important is the idea of how we are to perceive class. Now, all of this talk of small businesses, first and foremost, is a way to push the blame of the economy on the wrong people. The 1%, the big companies, the major companies, are the issue on why small businesses can't function. They have near monopolistic control over a lot of the industries, and small businesses can't function because of that. But it's easier to say, well, it's the minimum wage and the fact that they'd have to pay their minimum wage workers $31,000 a year instead of $15,000 a year. That is the problem. That is why we can't afford a minimum wage. We need to protect small business interests. I think the bigger problem is the fact that large companies have changed the dynamic of things so much that small businesses can't function. And again, it's a misdirection to put small business owners who may not be making that much more than some of the numbers we're talking about. And yes, they're exploiting people, and yes, they're exploiting their workers, but some of them might not be making much more than what we're looking at in some of these scenarios, especially if you're running a very small storefront, maybe by yourself, maybe with very few workers. They may not be making much more than some of these values that we're looking at. It might be people who are very much able to make stimulus checks. And I think what they're trying to do is drive a class wedge. They are trying to put this $50,000 that drives this rural versus urban perspective. It drives this class divide, and it makes us focus on each other. And the idea that, you know, I'd be angry at somebody making $11 an hour off of something like, you know, a job at McDonald's versus somebody who's been paid at that similar rate for maybe, you know, what's considered a more skilled job. This is all about introducing a desire to separate us by class. And this is working way too well. Because I've seen too many people complaining, oh, well, why should this person get this much minimum wage? Or why should that person get this? And, you know, I'm not getting a stimulus check now and I deserve it. No, no, no. We all deserve this. They are trying purposefully to split us by creating these low cutoffs, by creating these small discrepancies within us. The larger picture here is that there is a huge corporate wealth where a lot of companies, all the companies, made almost, you know, $4 trillion off of this pandemic. People are dying in such large numbers that it's like 3,000 plus a day now. We are over 400,000 deaths in the United States from this pandemic, and people made $3.7 trillion off of it. They are trying to use these numbers to turn us against each other. And we need to focus on what the real struggle is. Now, I'm not saying that in a class reductionist way. Race is a factor. Gender is a factor. Identities are factors. Ability is a factor. But when you get down to it, these particular numbers are not taking those into account either. These numbers are not addressing the concerns and needs of anything. They are just numbers. And when you look at them as they are, what they do represent is a desire to divide people by class, to say $50,000 across the board should be enough. To say these things, and it's to get people in different areas of the country angry at each other. And it's working. And we need to stop letting it work. We need to come together on these issues. On these issues especially. Because this is something we can all agree on. With that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and bell for notifications. You can follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. My name is Anarchist Tara, and I hope you enjoyed watching.